Well, let's, go ahead and do that then. See, call the meeting to order. It is 11:29 by my watch. And, we'll go ahead and get started with a roll call.
Richard Farias.
Here.
Lawson Picasso. Diana Martinez. Here. Frank Gonzalez. Cliff Soloway.
Here.
Rachel Zapata. Adelita Cantu. John Kelly.
Here.
Tom Corser.
Here.
Vanessa Alvarado. Bill Day. Mary Dennis.
Here.
Annette.
Here.
Audra Patzado. And Robert Zapata.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Velma. And Velma Serrano will also lead us in today's invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Yes, please bow your head. We come before you today to give you honor and praise. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together this day. We ask for your hand of blessing on this meeting of the CPS Energy Citizen Advisory Committee. We ask that you guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom and productivity and respect for one another. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. Amen. Amen.
Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Velma. Thank you, everyone. All right, Chair Carolyn, we're just ahead of schedule. Mr. Cal, move on to step up to the listers.
Hey, ahead of schedule is a good thing.
I know, very rare. Shall I proceed, sir?
Sure.
All right, so we're going to go on to my staff update today. I'll give Velma an opportunity to pull up the PowerPoint presentation I prepared for the staff update because I have several topics, and I thought it would be easier to have a visual than to just, talk about 5 or 6 different things without anything to focus your eyes on there. So I'll give Velma just a minute. So a lot has transpired since the committee last met, and we're on a high-level briefing of several key events. This is a list here of the events that I will be covering, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you all have today about these items. I also have several members of the CPS Energy team that are here in person or via WebEx, so respond to any questions that you have. Next slide, please. All right, so a significant, event that has transpired since our last meeting was our Board of Trustees vote on our new generation plan. The Board of Trustees voted to adopt a new generation plan on January 23rd. The board was presented with 2 generation portfolios, known as P2 and P9, that best align with our planning objectives. The Board of Trustees voted for the generation portfolio referred to as Blended Portfolio 2, which will power our community with a blend of natural gas, solar, wind, and energy storage. The big takeaway is that this plan also ends our use of coal by 2028. It is a near-term plan taking to 2030, but it does not stop here. We will revisit the generation plan periodically. Now, getting to this decision point was a 16-month process. And during this time, our staff worked with our rate advisory committee, stakeholders, the community, and external consultants to identify and evaluate the generation resources to power our communities while leveraging broad perspectives and expertise. We are a leader in renewable energy, both in wind and solar, and we remain committed to reducing our carbon intensity. Going forward, we will continue looking for opportunities to incorporate new and improved technologies in power generation. The board will receive a briefing on how we will begin to execute on the new plan at our next board meeting. And there will also be future updates given to the board on the progress of executing to the plan, as well as new technologies that can be utilized so we can keep the board apprised. So let's move on and take a look at each. We have 2 slides illustrating the 2 portfolios that were presented to the board that you can see what was approved. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the 2 portfolios that were presented to the board. The approved P2 blended portfolio and a P9 rental portfolio. And this slide gives you the fuel sources for each. To provide context, we need to replace 2,100 megawatts of capacity by 2030 due to power plants that are retiring or transitioning away from coal. And in addition to that, we have load growth within our growing community that we need to address. Both portfolios retire Spruce 1, the coal power plant, in 2028, and convert Spruce 2 coal power plant to gas in the 2027 to 2028 timeframe. P2 replaces needed capacity with a blend of natural gas, solar, wind, and energy storage. P9 replaces needed capacity with wind, solar, and energy storage. P2 incorporates flexible, efficient natural gas technologies, and P9 incorporates additional wind along with short duration storage. Let's turn over to the next slide so you can see additional comparison criteria. So this is a comparison between the two portfolios that were presented and our planning objectives. With the blended portfolio 2, we can see that it offers dispatchable or controllable generation, is less susceptible to extreme weather risk, incorporates renewable and energy storage, and meets the 2030 CAC target. This will also require additional mitigation strategies to meet the 2040 CAC target. The renewable portfolio P9 far exceeds the 2030 and 2040 CAC target. It requires higher volume of market purchases with increased exposure during extreme weather conditions. P2 retains a greater degree of fuel diversity, carefully balancing reliability and affordability while continuing our transition to a lower carbon future. It is also a portfolio supported by the majority of the RAC members. It retains our experienced workforce to support that transition, and it protects our position in extreme weather events. So I will pause here to see if there's any questions about the two portfolios.
I have a question since Benny is here. You know, there's concern about the 2065 completion of natural gas usage. And I'm just wondering, that's really way out in the future. I mean, I think logic would say there's all kind of opportunities to accelerate that date, bring it forward, if the technology moves as we think it might. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, I think that's very fair to say. When you start trying to predict that far ahead, the technology is still unknown. We built this plan utilizing the technology that we can get today. It's what we can commercially contract for and put in place. We do anticipate significant growth in the area of geothermal energy, for example, both for generation and for storage. There's opportunities to use the earth as a heat sink, if you will, right, to put power away and then bring it back. There's a fair amount of research going on in that area. You've heard about small modular nuclear reactors. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. They group these little 50 megawatt units together and 600 megawatt blocks. So it makes a very manageable size. And there's things out there people are working on that I don't even know about.
Right, sure. Well, you know, I know there was some concern among some folks about the 2065 target date, and to me, it just logic said there's lots of opportunity to bring that. Thank you.
Yvonne, I have a question. So, I was wondering about this additional, the 80% increase, that's only on the renewable and storage, right? Benny, the 80% increase, it's not the total megawatt capacity, but it's just.
Well, it's renewable and storage,
right?
Yeah.
Just, there's 80% increase from today on the renewables, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get to Tom and I'll come back to you.
Yes, so I didn't hear the debate that went on in the Board of Trustees meeting. I'm curious as to what the tenor of that was, right? Was it pretty much accepted, or was there any kind of a discussion around the P2, P9 question?
I thought it was a very collegial discussion. They talked a little bit about pros and cons,
Okay.
and they came to a vote very quickly.
Oh, they did, okay.
Yeah, I didn't, Lisa, you were there. Did you see it any differently?
I think what I saw was that they very much value our ability to control our destiny with local resources, and the concern probably that got the most conversation was that P9 puts us at the mercy of ERCOT's market compared to having our own resources located here. I think that was probably the biggest element of the discussion, in my view.
So a follow-on to that would be, P2 seems like the balanced, kind of rational decision, right? I agree with that.
Sounds right.
But P9 offers a possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't think we're ready for that yet, is my read.
I'm with you, that's what I thought too, between
So-
P9s.
Do you think, Benny, that taking the tact of P2 would have the flexibility to eventually arrive at P9 to the extent the solar, the wind, the other alternatives pan out the way P9 assumed they would? You see what I mean? In other words,
We see the flexibility in the future. As you all know, when you invest, you average, right? You buy a little at a
sure,
time.
sure.
Well, it's the same with how we want to invest in these resources. We don't want to write a check and commit to assets that'll take us through 2050, because we know
That's right.
there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
And geothermal is, there's so much opportunity there.
Yeah.
We can make this happen.
Yeah.
We want to buy enough to keep us moving forward, meet the needs of the community. Reliability, affordability, environmental responsibility are the three key areas. We've always heard affordability, reliability, affordability.
Yeah, all right.
Flops, but the two are always right there. That's our focus.
Yeah.
And so we've got a plan using existing technology to get us to 2030. Okay, that'll let us move to there, and we know along the way, we're seeing change. We're already talking to people about pilot projects around energy storage, long-duration energy storage.
Mhm.
Energy storage is gonna be essential if we're gonna take solar and wind and make it usable in a dispatchable form.
Scalable.
Now, there's costs associated with that. And so the belief is that geothermal energy may come in as a dispatchable resource where you don't have to have any efficiency loss from storing energy through the storage system and then bringing it back.
Yeah. I think that's one of my comments on the overall plan, is that a lot of people digest it as it's a discrete decision, that's a direction we're going in, it's singular, right?
It's not.
And it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that's a kind of a misnomer, that people say, oh, these guys aren't thinking about green options, they're not thinking about renewables and all this. We are, it's just the decision we made today is to put us on a track that's this direction. Doesn't mean we can't turn later, right?
Meet our near-term needs.
Correct.
And create opportunity to change
Yeah.
direction.
This is a
as
decision
we-
based on what we know.
That's
What
right.
we can buy today.
It's what we can actually act upon.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think that's a kind of a communication, thing that we have to have with the city, is to make sure everybody understands that.
I'd like
Yeah,
to respond
the-
to Mr. Bonnie's question, and then I'll come in, I have two comments for you after that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just quickly thought, the key to this decision, I read it very clearly, is we can fulfill our goals and not put ourselves too much at risk while we're doing it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Good.
I heard you say that this is gonna be reviewed from time to time, and that sounds a little kind of loose. Is that kind of at the discretion of the board, or certainly it would need to be looked at by 2030 to see if we are actually attaining those goals and those targets?
Well two prior 30 will be reviewed. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Rudy was saying every 2 to 3 years, or 3 to 5 years.
So I was latching on every 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
And just so you know, we update our plans every year.
Yeah.
I mean,
of course
we
have to have
reassess
it.
the market, we reassess
Right.
emerging technology. John Casa, you all know John, he's not with us today because he's at an EPRI event on the energy storage. So we're continuing to push and work with these groups that are forming out there in the industry. We're part of the low carbon research initiative EPRI has in place. So we're looking at all areas.
The dialogue will continue with the board, on an annual basis. So this will be, it'll still be a regular conversation, which again is gonna be really good for keeping up with, things that evolve and keeping the public informed. Benny, two things that I wanted to mention, is that the board, and feel free to add on to these if you like, but the board also looked closely at extreme weather. And P2 gave us more control over our own generation versus having to go into the market.
Right.
And the board also had concerns of being able to build transmission in order to get all of the wind onto the grid that was called for the P9 portfolio.
Absolutely correct. When we have to go to the market, we're assuming that the energy's there and we can buy it at a fair price. what we can generate for it.
Mhm.
Kevin, do you have anything you want to add?
What I was gonna add about the periodic, view of this, to Benny's point, we view, I think, doing the same type or similar type of really detailed analysis about every 3 years. Part of the board's decision, though, also asked us or directed us to come back and give them an update every year. So there's many opportunities to do course corrections or change more from a P2 to a P9 or even a hybrid of those. Again, as market conditions change, to Benny's point, is if the geothermal or other pilots turn out very positively, it gives us a chance to update the board and adjust our direction, as we go. I like your description of, it's kind of a guidepost. This is the direction we're heading. Doesn't mean you can't take an off-ramp at some point to change direction and then take an on-ramp in a slightly different direction.
I'll just chime in from a supply chain perspective. Benny can't turn anything off until old plants, until we build something new.
That's right.
And as the person responsible for supply chain issues, I'm already having a panic that we're gonna be able to get everything we need to get to build and design and be ready for turning something on before we have to turn something off. So the decision, I know people have asked, couldn't this have waited? And the answer is no. We have got to replace those aging gas plants fast.
Yeah.
So just I'll add that little nugget in too. It's not a factor of not wanting to do something that is potentially better in the future with better technology. It's the factor of having to do something now and be prepared.
And I think that's another aspect of what I was talking about the community at large.
Right.
Is not used to these long-term decision and processing things. I mean, they're used to making a decision and 2 years later, all right, what's the next decision, right? Well,
You're
this is
right,
a 5-10 year kind of thing, so.
It's human nature.
Very different. Yeah,
You
human
make a
nature.
good point. When you think about the gas conversion, for example, why do we have to wait to 27? Well, we're not waiting to 27,
Yeah.
we're starting now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes every bit of 4
Right.
years to do all the
Project.
Exactly.
upfront design, engineering, procurement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's.
Yeah, procurement, all that takes time.
Where's my RFP while I'm at
And
it?
it. Uh-oh, yeah.
He wants a Primavera schedule too, right? So.
She said with hugs and love.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kevin and Benny, for being here to support these questions. We greatly appreciate it. This is super interesting and important dialogue, and, Chair Kelly, we are happy, to continue to, make this a regular update for the community to keep going forward.
Sorry, two things, Yvonne, if you can move closer to the
I keep
speaker.
forgetting.
And then I see, Mary has her hand up. Mary, did you have a comment, Mayor Dennis?
I did. Thank you so much. Just to kind of piggyback on what Thomas Kozer has said, but to Benny, I wanted to say thank you to you and your staff for everything that you all are doing and have done to get us to this point. And I'm very proud of the decision that the board has made. But just a big thank you to Benny and his team to getting us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We really appreciate your support.
Well said, Mary.
All right, if there are no further questions from the chat or the other, okay, then we'll move on to, update regarding the RAC, just a brief high-level update there. We'll move on to the RAC 5. All right, so the Rate Advisory Committee, beginning at their February meeting later this month, they will begin their next phase of their journey, which will be on rate design. This is, their first meeting is gonna include, some very important foundational information on the regulations and laws that govern our rates. We expect that this process will run a course over the next several months. We will be happy to bring you all updates along the way as they progress their journey.
So Ivana, will the RAC be a sustained organization to kind of continually look at this on a periodic basis?
I'm not sure. I know, but right now I know that they're very focused on this super important piece.
So this is round 2 for them.
Basically,
right?
yeah, the first was
December.
generation plan, and now this one.
Well, before that, it was the rate advisory. They came up with the first rate change that we made, year and a half, 2 years ago?
Energy efficiency.
They gave
Oh,
feedback
yeah,
to
yeah.
it. They didn't come up with it, just for clarity.
Oh, is that right?
That part of it?
Yeah, the staff came up with it and they gave feedback.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My bad.
No, that's okay.
No, that's good. Good correction.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about another key event that transpired, effective February the 1st. We have 2 trustees that are moving into new roles. We have a new chair Janie Gonzalez will be our new board chair, and Dr. Francine Romero will be our new vice chair. Both the chair and the vice chair, they chair board committees. You can see the listing there, the committees that they will be chairing starting this month. One other key thing to note is that there will be a reception held immediately after the February 27th board meeting to thank Dr. Mackey for his service as board chair and to welcome Janie Gonzalez and Dr. Romero as incoming chair and vice chair respectively. We did send you all an invite for that last night. The event is currently scheduled for 5 to 6 p.m. We invite you all to join us for this appreciation event, and you can have the opportunity to interact with our board of trustees and several guests that will be present. Yes, sir.
So the trustee meeting is at 1 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
Right, it lasts till 5?
Yes, sir.
Wow, okay. You're gonna need a reception after that,
We
right?
really give them a workout.
Okay, all right. I just wanna make sure there's no big gap there, I just didn't know for sure.
Yeah, we typically, I mean, we may end a little early, you know, but typically we end at 5 sharp, we go all the way through the session.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can you clarify the difference in their terms, the dates and stuff? It's so wide.
They serve 5-year terms.
Each serves 5 years.
That's correct. So all board members have the opportunity to serve 2 5-year terms. And so you can see when they each joined.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Mackey just finished his first 5-year term, and he was reappointed to his second. All right, and just again, regarding that, the board appreciation reception, several stakeholders and community partners have also been invited to attend, like city council members, various HOAs, colleges and universities, you know, some of our large customers. The event will be here in our HQ in the first floor area, not far from where you all typically meet in the grid room, you know, closer to the cafeteria area. So we hope you can join us. All right, we can move on to the next slide. All right, so front and center, here are some recent news articles, just some snapshots there of some articles that were in Friday's San Antonio Express newspaper. These articles were both in the editorial section. So the first one on the left-hand side is an opinion article that was submitted by one of our RAC members, Dee Belmadas. Her article stated that the board's vote on the new generation plan was welcome news, but there is more work to be done. The other on your right-hand side was an editorial commenting on CPS Energy's performance during last week's ice storm. The editorial highlighted our customer communications and outreach that was done before and during the storm. And we did that through various channels. So there was direct outreach to customers, or, you know, and also through social media, you know, text, automated messages. You know, so we really had a very robust communication plan, you know, with our customers during the event.
Yeah, I just would make just a comment, just an observation. I think y'all are doing a great job with public outreach. I think we've really seen a lot of improvement by CPS in their outreach. I think since Winter Storm Uri, I think things have improved a lot.
Feels that way, I agree. Yeah.
It was a nice contrast between San Antonio and Austin. But in all fairness, I know Austin got hit a lot harder by the storm than we did.
And I must say, you know, when you talk about communication and outreach, I was very proud, not only that we sent, you know, crews to help with the restoration effort,
Yeah.
but our customer response unit team, you know, who was on the ground setting up a mobile support station in Fair Oaks Ranch and Timberwood Park, areas that were really, you know, hit hard here locally. Then they moved that support operation over to Austin, you know, to provide that personal touch to the folks up there as well. So I was just really proud of that. So thank you. All right, let's move on to my last 2 updates. The next one is on past due receivables. So at the January 30th board meeting, our EVP of Customer Strategy, Deanna Hardway, provided an update on past due receivables. This slide illustrates the number of past due accounts, the amount of payment assistance provided, the number of outreach events held, the amount past due for residential and commercial customers, and the number of disconnects performed. We have seen some positive trends in the past 2 months, resulting in $200 million in past due accounts with $100 million on installment plans. We are continuing our collection efforts with past due accounts. They are trending positively for the 2nd month in a row, and we are focused on the 97,000 accounts not currently on a plan, so we're conducting assistance to them, you know, to prevent disconnection. However, if we need to proceed with that, then we will.
So, I mean, the paper said 210 million past due.
Correct.
But that was last, was it January, I think it came out? Or I don't remember what day it was, but
It
it
may
was 210. They didn't talk anything about installment plans or
Oh, okay.
how many were.
Yeah, I believe 210 was a prior number. These figures are as of 12/31, which take us to 200.
Okay, so that was, I think it was December, actually.
Yeah, and then I'm hopefully optimistic that the number will continue to drop.
Yeah,
Get
that's
the
a big number.
numbers for January.
Yeah.
Yeah,
3 months
I would
full
suggest
collection.
that, you know, the more information that CPS can provide to the public about how we're gonna get this, you know, 200 million plus, down, what's the plan, you know, how are we, you know, reviewing it, et cetera. Because I think as a ratepayer, I think, particularly when we're talking about rate increases, you know, the easy thing for somebody to assume is, oh, we're gonna have to raise our rates because we've got this $200 million that's never gonna get paid off, and we're gonna have to pay for it. And so if we can counteract that type of information, that would help.
Gotcha. Duly noted. Thank you for that.
Under the, what do they call it? I lost my mind.
I can relate to that too.
Transparency.
Oh, transparency.
Under the idea of transparency.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Steve.
Yvonne, do we have a data point prior to Winter Storm Uri of what our uncollectibles were then?
We do. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we do.
Is it on that magnitude, you know?
It's not even close.
Yeah, but there was probably a usual standard that was
Like a third,
acceptable to keep
of that.
out there that was,
Yeah,
Went
so,
off the
so
charts.
we're still recovering from Uri. From a-
Pre-pandemic, the pandemic, Uri, all of it.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
2 years of disconnect moratorium. It took us
Yeah.
2 years to get here, it's gonna take us 2 years to get out of here.
Sure.
Good
So
point.
what is the policy on disconnects? Is it 3 months in arrears, or if you don't have a payment plan, what is the?
There's a couple different things. And I know that KJ is on here, so
And I
she
think Ann is as well.
and they can correct me if I don't state these things correctly. So in terms of disconnect, you may remember that the board actually made a decision going into the pandemic as people were losing jobs and so forth to put a moratorium on disconnects. That moratorium did not get lifted until about spring 2021, and then, 2022. And then we couldn't disconnect going into summer because we reached such peak temperatures so quickly. So the PUC for the state has a limit on disconnecting when you have extreme temperatures. So if you have consecutive 100-degree days, you cannot disconnect. It's considered a health and safety concern. So we aren't subject to PUC, but we follow the same standard. So we went for most of the summer with no ability to disconnect to incentivize collection. So we couldn't even begin to disconnect until October, realistically, in terms of getting, especially residential customers. We started with commercial, but it didn't really get going until October, after we'd gotten through the 100 degrees. You know, we had, I think, 58 days of 100-degree temperature in the summer.
Okay, that helps, thanks.
Just for information, I was reading an article about a week or so ago about the power company in England and what they're doing for uncollected balances. They're actually going to people's homes unannounced, and they're swapping out their meter, and it becomes a meter where you have to pay up front.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know, you pay $200, and then you get power as long as you have the balance.
Oh, wow.
And then you have to pay up front again, so that's pretty extreme, but it was interesting to read about that.
It is.
KJ gave you a thumbs up.
Okay. KJ gave me a good grade.
Oh, good.
So it
Well,
was,
thank you for the insight there, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a quick follow-up. You know, I know ballparking it is dangerous with this kind of amount of money, but you said it was around a third before the pandemic?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about, this used to be $5 million, or this used to be $2 million. This was still,
It was still in the tens of millions.
Big
right.
number.
It just wasn't at this volume.
And that's what we're trying to get back to.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think,
All right, Chair Carol, I'll move on to my final slide. I'm already eating into Lisa's presentation there, so. All right, final slide.
actually, it all feeds right in, so it's perfect.
Oh, perfect. All right, and just, I wanted to close with upcoming events. We have, this Friday, we are, gonna have a milestone event relative to our Casa Verde weatherization program. We have reached a milestone of 30,000 homes weatherized with that program. So we are highlighting a home in District 6, so you will be seeing some press information on that. That's the Friday morning. The RAC, is scheduled to be on the 23rd, Board of Trustees meeting and the reception on the 27th. The MUC is currently scheduled for February 28th, and the Viva San Antonio event from the San Antonio Chamber is also on the 28th. For those of you that are not familiar with the Viva San Antonio event, it occurs during the state legislative session, and it brings together business and community leaders at the state capitol. The event is an advocacy day that enables engagement between business owners, policymakers, and community leaders to address issues and opportunities that are important to San Antonio and Bexar County. All right, Chair Kelly, I will now turn it over to you, and then when you're ready, I can introduce our speaker.
Well, I think we'll just move along pretty quickly because we don't want to run out of time, but, yes, please, go ahead.
I can introduce myself, it's okay.
Well, then
We'll just get moving. My name is Lisa Lewis. I have been with CPS Energy for 22 years. I have not been to present to the CAC probably at least a couple of years in the before times. I started here in the marketing department, moved into corporate communications. I was, if you know Melissa Sorolla, I was in that position for several years. Then I moved to people and culture, which is what we call our HR team, and I was over the HR team directly for several years. And then about a little over a year and some odd months ago, I moved into the Chief Administrative Officer role. And so I have been in that position now and responsible for supply chain, people and culture, safety, occupational health, our vehicle fleet, and strategy. The strategy team that supports our Board of Trustees and the CEO reports to my organization because it's a shared service. So anything that supports operations and is a shared service is in my team. When Vivian left us from our Chief Information Officer, the IT team is presently reporting to me as well. So I'm all the fun stuff that supports all the awesome stuff.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing, Lisa.
It's a wealth of opportunity every day. So Rudy was, hoped he would be able to come, but he actually had two commitments in the same time block that he could not be available to you all. So he asked if I would cover, and I said I would be happy to do so. Before I dive into the material, I'll set the table just a little bit. In 2019, we were already in a massive industry transition. We were already seeing big changes to our workforce. We were already seeing big changes to technology. We already knew we had needs to build new generation. I mean, we could see all of this coming. You know, the pandemic and Winter Storm Uri just put it all into overdrive and created just a giant shift for us, just in the same way that every other business is dealing with those changes. We are too, and then you layer on all that's been going on in this industry, and it's a nonstop extravaganza. When Rudy was appointed to fill the CEO vacancy on an interim basis, he was tasked by the trustees to put together a 5-year plan, and so this is the beginning of that. There's nothing magical to the number of 2027 other than it was a 5-year plan from the point where he was picking up the mantle in early 2022 and trying to march forward. So we're already starting to have conversations about beyond 2027, but we know that as where we are with this massive organizational transition, that really is what's encompassed in 2027. So that's sort of the meat of what's here. If I had to boil what we have to do down into simple things, I would say modernizing our infrastructure, and by that I mean the grid, the generation options we have, the gas delivery, the whole thing. We are in such a massive transition in terms of technology and capability and how things will work in the future. We have got to transform our digital systems, our data, and our communications technology. I'm sure you've heard before that we are operating on antique technology, and it feels like it every day. Our IT team is managing an ecosystem of tech systems that is almost 350 different applications, And as you might imagine, they weren't all born at the same time, they don't all talk to each other, and they create a ton of challenge and limitation. And so we're in the stages of reimagining the entire data ecosystem. And then investment in the workforce. So CPS Energy was already faced with a pretty large retirement cliff. The last big wave of retirement had come in the mid-'80s, mid to late '80s, and going into the early '90s, as we were doing a lot of transition at that time. And so we have a vast number of employees who were departing, and we've seen a lot of that already, and all at the same time that our technology is changing. So it's a big lift to get us where we need to be in terms of workforce investment. And then meanwhile, back at the ranch, we also have to figure out how we're going to be cyber ready and how we are going to be resilient enough to deal with all of the climate actions that we are seeing. And I'm talking about the winter storm Uris and the random ice storms and the 58 days of 100-degree heat and. So just to set the table, that's where this starts. If you will jump to slide 5, please. I'm not going to go slide by slide. I figured you can read. I'm going to make the leap that everybody here can read. If I had to point out just a handful of headwinds, it's the risk landscape is changing. Vast amounts of regulatory change and uncertainty, continued cyber threats, and now with all kinds of fun in the fuel market volatility. And that was already in play before the global tensions that increased drama in our fuels. The unrest and the extremist situations, extremist events related to grid, a big concern, and they are amplifying our issues with physical and cybersecurity, and then overcoming challenges to adapt to rapid customer growth. For our community has grown in ways we just did not anticipate. You know, our growth outpaced our expectations by something like 20% this year, and we were already anticipating massive growth. I saw a presentation about 2 weeks ago, an economic forecast that said our building and development is going to slow down to 2019 levels, and that was growth for us too. So it's not stopping. It might be slowing down a bit from where we are, but it's not stopping.
Lisa, can I?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this topic right here, the soft pricing, could you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Sure. I'm gonna actually ask the experts to elaborate on it.
Okay.
They're just, I'll give a headline and then I'll let Kevin or Benny chime in. What we're seeing is the prices for wholesale electric power are nowhere near where they have been in the past, and because it's a situation driven by taking renewables first and then having the power available and on to fill in those gaps, and it's just not as profitable as it once was from a wholesale power prospect.
So the prices are less than they have.
Yeah, I'll let you two add where I.
Well, Kevin's team has done a lot of research, and so let Kevin
All right,
share
Kevin, you explain.
the benefit of that.
I think as Lisa and Benny said, one of the trends we're seeing, and you see dramatic growth within ERCOT in terms of wind generation and now solar generation is kind of following that same ramp up. So as Lisa said, take the renewables first. I mean, the state does it, wind and solar, whenever they produce, the state takes it. So what we see is with that growth, the fuel cost is, really not, right? You have wind power or solar power. So those become very low cost, that they're essentially, must-take fuel resources. So the problem that we see is you have large amounts of generation from wind and solar. It drives your power prices low because there's no fuel cost associated with that. And so throughout the course of the day or a month, you tend to see much softer fuel price or power prices than we used to see. The challenge that presents for the generation assets, though, and why you see the volatility is wind can change dramatically. And we can go from the morning by the time we get to the afternoon or evening peak, wind may drop 10, 12, 15,000 megawatts. I mean, it can ramp out that quickly. But then you need, most days, 10, 12, 15,000 megawatts of something else to fill in, right? That's your dispatchable generation that we can control. problem that we see and why that bullet says different value proposition for the generation assets is when we see you go through the day with many hours of low prices, probably prices below your actual cost to run the unit, but then you need that generation for a few hours of the day, and you see prices ramp up for a smaller number of hours. So the value proposition that's driving within ERCOT is for units that are flexible, can start, stop, can ramp very quickly. So things like our older gas steam units, for example, that's just not the market they were built, to thrive in. That's one of the reasons why, as we look at P2 and some of the changes that we're making in our fleet, those newer types of flexible generations still may be gas-fired, but they're much better suited for this type of market that we're seeing now. That's really all started with that rapid increases in wind and solar. Hopefully that provides a little bit better context.
Yeah, I think that helps. I do have one follow-up question. As you said, the wind and solar, they don't pay anything for the sunlight or the wind. So the question I have, though, is, didn't we subsidize a lot of the installation of that power through government subsidies? Isn't that distorting the cost a little bit, or is there no?
No, that's a factor. Wind was, initially had production tax credits, so the federal government will pay, for every megawatt hour that's generated, the federal government will pay a certain amount of dollars. On solar, it used to be investment tax credits. You didn't get paid per megawatt hour of generation. You got paid basically as a percentage of the capital cost that you spent to build the facility. With the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, the production tax credits for wind were extended. Solar now can actually qualify for either. You can get production tax credits, or you can choose to do the investment tax credit. But what that does, particularly with the production tax credits, right, is it incentivizes the person who owns the wind farm to produce no matter what the price of the power is.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna get their return on investment in part or in large part from the federal government.
Yeah.
They're not worried about whether they're selling to ERCOT at $0, or a penny, or even a slight loss, because the money that is essentially bankrolling their investment is coming through that tax credit.
So it sort of gives them maybe not a level playing field with all the other more traditional forms of power generation, right?
Definitely makes it more challenging for the traditional generation.
So as a follow-up to what John was asking, I saw the same thing. So is the headwind the volatility in pricing, or is that what you're saying? The volatility is what's the headwind, or is it just not knowing what the pricing is going to be at any particular time of the year?
And the volatility not prompting people to, there's a lack of plants coming online, because to build a firm capacity plant, you got to put a big investment in.
Right,
and
yeah.
so now we just don't have enough firm capacity to be, as all these plants age out, we're starting to be in a position where we need to be ready for that availability.
So for your return on capital investment, you got to know what
I would say there's several elements to that. That is absolutely one of them when you look at it from a long-term point of view. I think when you look at it kind of short-term or operationally, it does a couple things for us. One is that volatility, it creates opportunities for where we could get stuck on the wrong side, right? If we have generation units that we weren't running because of the expectation around, or they didn't get awarded, if you will, through ERCOT because of the power prices. So they're not online, and then for that couple hours, instead you get your unexpected wind dropout, and you get some short price spikes, it increases the likelihood of the risk that we could be on the wrong side of that.
Gotcha, I see.
The other challenge operationally that I think is just as important, maybe even more so, is if you look at the Denny's coal units, for example, right? They don't necessarily like to ramp up and down as much as we're forced to do it.
Yeah, it's not.
Because overnight, with those low prices, they sit at the minimum load overnight, and then we have to ramp them up to full load during the day, and they come back down to the minimum load overnight. So they're ramping up and down every day. That's really not how they were designed to run. So it increases your maintenance costs, right? It increases your risk of having to come offline for an outage to repair something. That increased ramping, increased wear and tear on the unit. So it adds to our maintenance costs.
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
I have a follow-up, another one. So the question then I guess I would have is ERCOT, surely they're aware of this situation. And I know that the legislature is wanting them to do some further enhancements to the way the process works for the grid. Are they taking this into account, try to find some way to try to keep the cost better in balance? I mean, I like, personally, for us, I like the fact that CPS has their own generation and we can control our destiny to a great extent. But if we can't afford to do that because it's not cost effective, then that kind of makes it more difficult for us. And it's kind of ironic to me that we've got the state trying to be separate from the rest of the country, and yet federal rules are driving a lot of this problem. Is that, that's ironic.
It's a very interesting.
It's a complicated business.
You know, I would say ERCOT is absolutely aware. You know, ERCOT, you've got individual companies, right, that are making decisions about what to invest and how to invest their money in the market. So I think what we're seeing from the Public Utility Commission and the state legislature is a couple of things. One is how do you design the market to ensure there's sufficient revenue, sufficient money in there to convince folks to invest additional generation. So to Lisa's point, we don't get into the long-term solution of load in ERCOT continues to grow because people love to move to Texas, but we're not building the generation assets to be able to meet that load going forward. I think the other thing we're seeing, particularly in response as follow-up from Winter Storm Uri, is I think there's definitely a push at the state legislature, state government, and the PUC around the value of dispatchable generation. I think there is a concern within the legislature, for example, the state has moved too far towards the renewable side. And the gas-fired generation, that dispatchable generation is not following along. So, yeah, David, please, David, correct me and add to anything I'm saying, but I think what we're also seeing is that there are very different opinions, I would say, between the state legislature right now and the lieutenant governor and the governor on what the right solutions might be.
And everyone else. Everyone has
So, to kind of to John's point, with this huge investment that's needed for dispatchable generation and so forth, right? And the fact that we're not alone, Austin, Houston, we're not alone in terms of the need for that flexibility and the risk associated with this soft pricing. It, you know, coming from the telecommunications industry, right, where it was Ma Bell and that was it, no choice, to who do you want, right? In my lifetime, right, just huge transformation, and it went through this stage where everybody said, well, I can do this little piece better than you can, the big monolith can, right? And they were right to some degree, and there's been consolidation, so it's been kind of a cyclical process, right? Is the same thing true in generation, where there's opportunity for some of these newer technologies for partnerships where CPS doesn't invest in it, you invest in that company and they do it in partnership with others, right? Is that landscape evolving at all?
We can do that through contracts, but I want to go back to make a distinction on something you just said. So we're a municipal utility. We have an obligation to serve our customers. You've got market participants out there, independent power producers. They don't have an obligation to serve you. It's a commercial venture. If I can serve you and make money, I will do it. If it's going to cost me money to serve you, I'm not going to do that, is the view they take. They don't have energy efficiency programs, right? Municipal utilities have energy efficiency programs. So they're coming at this.
It isn't a good parallel.
Yeah, so we have to keep that in mind, and that's the challenge the PUC and the regulatory folks are trying to address. It's how to keep these people engaged, because most of the state is unregulated, and it's served by these IPPs. And so they've got to keep them engaged where they can make a dollar to provide the electricity, because ERCOT, as Kevin pointed out, is not responsible or does not take into account the cost of electricity, but the availability of electricity.
Yeah. I guess I'm grounding my question or my comment in, you know, it's important to stick to your knitting, right? And if CPS has this much knitting, it's tough to stick to it, right?
Well, we've done that.
No, I understand, but I mean, I'm
You're
just
not
trying
off the mark, particularly when it comes to things about opportunities for grid management and for battery technology and those are the ways that it's playing very similarly to what you saw in the telecom industry.
Our solar PPAs, right? So we contract with people to provide solar electricity for us, as opposed to us installing them and doing it ourselves. And we do that because we can't monetize the tax credit. So they're the best person to do that. They've got the capability to put wind farms way out in West Texas, solar farms way out in West Texas. We're not gonna push people out that far. So it's better for us to contract for that and let them specialize. You see that still in areas in power generation today, just in different functions. So specialization is still very important to us.
Meanwhile, people are working their way into finding ways to get off-grid, or installing their own solar panels, or putting in their own solar plus storage, or figuring, and so all of that is happening and pushing all of this at the same time.
Many dimensions on the landscape,
The other angle I wanted to take your question, it ties back to the conversation we had around the P2, P9, a comment that Vinny made about one of the benefits of P2, or one of the needs we had, was to make selections based on the technology that's available today. So like if you look at specialization and development, as a municipal utility with an obligation to serve and knowing that the customer is bearing the cost of everything we do, that type of specialization on developing new technologies isn't really our forte. Once it becomes commercially ready, we're absolutely interested and willing to go invest in that. But to take it from kind of the ground up through development and incur those costs with our customers probably isn't the best business.
R&D is not your forte.
R&D is not our forte. That's somebody else's specialization. We want to minimize costs, maximize reliability with the tried and true technology that's out there. As the technology evolves, then we get different solutions that become available to us. That's the other way I would look at specialization through R&D.
Mr. Bonnet, did you have a question?
Yeah, and some of it's already been answered, but it hit me when I read your comment about regulatory uncertainty. And I heard some of that just now. And I assume that's both at the local, regional, state, and national level. Like, anything you're dealing with right now that we haven't already talked about that's a regulatory issue?
I would say we talked about ERCOT. What we didn't talk about is climate regulatory challenges. I mean, part of the reason coal is not going to become viable is because we're anticipating that there will be regulations to coal, and the cost of managing those will become ridiculous, and there'll be no point to staying with coal as a big factor in the decision to move away from it. It's a business-based decision and a good one for the climate. But I would say air quality decisions are they blow at the wind, if you will.
So Lisa's right. So if we wanted to keep Spruce 1, for example, in play, there's a $200 million investment we'd have to make for an SCR. There's a $60 million investment we would have to make for additional water treatment. Now the question is, if we say, you know what, we think that's good business, we're going to do that, what's going to come next?
So it's a highly risky investment.
Well, that's right. Even with natural gas, I mean, there's future legislation that's possible out there that can continue to require increased carbon capture and such to drive the cost up also. So anything that emits is subject to regulatory uncertainty at some level.
Absolutely.
So we have to recognize that, but natural gas gives us the best chance for the foreseeable future.
Makes sense.
Lisa, you're doing a horrible job of getting through your slides.
Actually, the plan for this is, it's much better to suggest conversationally than trying to.
No, I'm totally kidding you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so I think you've got a good flavor for the headwinds. I think for the tailwinds, our aging assets in this sense are an advantage. We aren't deeply sunk into something. We've got some old stuff that we can easily replace. It's time to retire it. That's not a bad thing. Diversification has been a very solid foundation for this organization, going back to the point in the 70s when this company decided to move away from having a single generation type gas and to start really thinking more broadly. And I think that the plan we're putting in place helps us leverage that continued diversification. The opportunities.
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but on the diversification, Steve and some of the rest of us talked about this before, and I've talked to many about it. I'm a big proponent for nuclear power, but yet we tend to avoid talking about it because the public doesn't understand the benefits of it versus, trade-offs, so.
This organization has benefited enormously from nuclear power since
Absolutely.
the South Texas project was built.
And I'm so glad that we have that.
Yeah.
Same.
I don't know,
Stability.
the small nuclear
Modular.
if they ever come online, are those
I think
something that could
they're
be
starting to get some
considered?
traction and
So
people are
they're
pretty excited
licensed.
about.
NewScale is a company.
Yeah.
They have a design that has been licensed, the only one so far. There are companies out there that have target commercial operation dates as early as 27, as late as 32 is what I've heard so far. So nuclear is out there. Now, I will say something, the other day somebody was talking about this. We did look to expand South Texas, well before I got here. None of those executives.
2009.
Yeah, none of those executives are still here. It was not received.
I'm here.
Yeah, but that's a long-term activity though,
It
right?
is. It requires a significant.
10, 20 years, right?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And we see what our friends at the Southern Company went through to get Plant Vogtle.
Yeah, right, sure.
I mean, it was
So,
a nail
just
biter.
quickly, then, is the cost of generating the nuclear power, how does it compete with all the other sources?
So it doesn't right now. But the belief is that as they commercialize
No,
it.
current nuclear. Current nuclear, not.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got you.
Current nuclear is good. It's base load, it's very affordable. The challenge we do see though is, it is base load.
Yeah.
Remember, at night, sometimes prices get very low, as you've heard Kevin and his team mention before. What would you say if I told you that happens during the day sometimes when we see the dreaded duck curve that they pioneered in California? Solar comes up during the day, prices go down. It gets costly to maintain a gas turbine online, so you have to start and stop those. That drives up your maintenance cost and reduces reliability just a little bit. Okay, so base load will have its challenges going forward. We've got to figure out how to manage that, and we're working on that.
Okay, thank you, sorry to interrupt you, Lisa.
Not an interruption at all. I think one of our other, big opportunities here is the technology is moving quickly, and there's an opportunity to leverage data and information to make more and more real-time decisions. So the opportunity to replace our systems while they are antique and desperately needed is also the opportunity to bring some really good data and capability technology to our operation. If you will jump to slide 12, I'm going to touch on these in sort of a highlight way. There's this really hideous eye chart of a slide in here, but it helps to illustrate. All of this is going on at the same time, picture. So as we laid this out and looked at what the decision points and the things that had to get done, we did accomplish some things this year. We got our rate request last year. Deanna connected customers with $80 million in customer support. We were able to staff up to an effective level. We ended last year with about 2,900 employees, and I was happy to see that on February 1st, we had about 3,200 employees. We hired 500 frontline people, 500 new employees this year, new to this organization. So that gives you any idea. I mean, that was 200 walking out the door and a net 300. So, I mean, it is.
Just in 2022.
Just in 2022. 500, we've never hired that many people in my tenure here, ever. 509 employees was a lot, most of them at frontline positions. Our staffing had just whittled down too low. Our energy efficiency program, the STEP 2.0, was approved by the board. We got the resource plan conversation complete. We have the metering partnership that we knew that was going on with SAWS. They're piggybacking on our meters. So these things were all accomplished in 2022, but you can see we still have plenty of work left ahead of us.
So Lisa, this comment applies to the prior slide that you just showed, as well as this one, is that in the customer experience, at top line, enhanced customer engagement, communication, equity, and transparency.
Yep.
I'd be inclined to suggest a check mark. I'm serious.
That's fair.
And,
I agree with you.
I think
it's improved.
Amazing progress in 2022 in terms of community engagement and communication, right? And I think that's a tailwind now.
Thank you.
On your prior chart, right? So
Appreciate that.
I would consider that.
Okay.
I agree, Tom.
Deanna's here to hear it.
And,
Yeah, I
you know,
wish Deanna could hear you.
There's
We're
something,
recording.
there's something to be said for, making a claim and owning it, right?
Mhm.
Even though it might not fully be developed, but just make a claim that we are a utility that communicates with our customers, right?
Right.
We are that, right? And to the extent you say that, you become it, right? So
Okay.
I would suggest that's
Thank you.
appropriate here.
Well, I will say we are a utility that communicates with our customers. A big part of what's included there that you cannot see is the opportunity to put a lot more automation, flexibility and choice into it, so that people can choose the things that they
Sure.
want to receive, can get more information, can customize those options.
Those are the technologies.
Those are the technology things that we just don't have in place today, but that is where we're driving to.
Make the claim.
Yeah, make the claim, I'll make the claim. From an operational perspective, I'm just gonna hit a few highlights for each one. So from the blue box section, the operational highlights, we talked about the need to maintain our diversity in terms of our generation options and not get stuck with, dinosaur technology. Benny's already talked all about, Spruce 2 conversion, peaking units, potential for geothermal. Pretty excited about the opportunity for long-term storage. All of those things have real future potential for us and are big focus points. There's also a lot of opportunity. Richard Medina's not here today. He's busily absorbing knowledge at Distributech, which is the sort of the premier event for grid nerds. And so, I said that with love. And so,
I called somebody a nerd the other day, guys.
Yes, both nerds. So he's out learning, what's out there and available as we try to figure out how to leverage and build on the grid technology that we need to have to make this transition possible. When we talk about financial stability, I, from my perspective, just knowing the history of this organization, I personally do not believe we have invested in this organization to this level since the late 70s and early 80s. We are rebuilding the whole organization at the same time. It's putting pressure on our financial metrics. I'm sure that you hear about that and the challenges that we face, and we will need rate support to get through this. There is no doubt in our minds that all of this will require rate support going forward. We're not destitute, we're not broke, we're not going out of business, but we are definitely having financial pressure. When it comes to customer experience, I think I said it earlier, Deanna likes to explain it as it took us 2 years to get in this accounts arrears position, and it is going to take us 2 years to get out of this accounts arrears position. We're targeting our IT transformation to help us make customer customization a possibility. It just doesn't exist today. And that includes everything from modernizing billing options and rate types. We just don't have the computer system to even be able to incorporate various rate types. The system is just not equipped to do the things we want to do. It's clunky, antique. I mean, if you could just imagine if you were still operating on the original iPhone and this system's 10 or 15 years older than that. So, I mean, it's ancient.
Lisa, I come from having worked in TxDOT, and they had antique systems that I constantly railed against because they were just so obsolete. And I think they finally went to incorporating some proprietary systems. Are y'all looking at proprietary improvements, or are you looking at trying to redo your own stuff in-house?
No, we will not do our own stuff in-house. We will end up replacing what today is our system of record. Our major system is SAP. We will end up replacing the version we have. It could be a new version of SAP. It could be Oracle. The RFP for that system went out on the street, I think, January 11th. It is going to take us all the way until early June to assess. And we're not just buying a single system, but we're looking at all of the rest of the ecosystem and how do all these things fit together. And we're going to have to tick and tie it all to each other to make it work properly.
Well, yeah, it's going to be an awesome transition. Imagine.
It's going to be mammoth, and it's going to take us 5 to 6 years to get all the way there. Oh.
Do you have SAP plus homegrown systems in, or no, is it all?
Most of our systems we have a few, I would say we have a handful of things that are homegrown.
Okay,
we have a lot of other technology.
Yeah, you do?
We have like I said, IT's running something like 350 applications today, and that's everything from, I forget what your funny asset management system is called. It has the funniest name. What's your asset management system called?
I think it's WMIS.
No, I'm not talking about WMIS. I'm talking about every group has a different asset management system. They all have.
We use SAP.
No, you have someone else. Trust me. And then there's the technologies, you know, the SCADA technologies and the design platforms and even just the website. All of this is all intricate and separate and,
It's all the back office stuff that you're trying to
yeah.
modernize.
And it's important to note you can take SAP and make it look like something else.
Yeah, oh, you can.
Oh, we're-
Yeah, it's a-
You can, and that's what we're dealing with.
We're operating
We
off
do
of an
that through that
SAP
technology.
version that my grandfather probably could have operated off of.
Well, I would suggest that when we're talking to the board of the general public, we've always got that Southwest Airlines model to compare to.
We do.
This is what happens to your, customers when you don't keep up with your systems.
Yes, I think that the IT team's new, tagline is "Don't be Southwest."
Right.
So you're not wrong.
A lot of companies and agencies are using that.
No, this is gonna be a huge, it's a decade of investment that's gonna happen here. It's gonna take us 6 years to get off of or transition from SAP to whatever the new system
The
is.
city did that 10 years ago.
We did it 20 years ago. This
Yeah.
is the first time we've done it since then, and so we're
But the
behind.
city's reaping the benefits now of that decision.
Yeah. Those are the customer highlights on, when we talk about, you know, engaged and service-oriented culture, the team culture. Again, I think I mentioned that the workforce transition is massive. It's not just a staffing issue, but also even a reallocation of staff we have today. We're gonna close coal operations. We're gonna have to reskill folks and help them transition to other jobs. We're hiring like crazy. I went into last year saying we would hire 1,000 people in 3 years. We hired 500 this past year, and I completely believe we'll hire another 500 in the next 2 years. So it's a big, big transition. Some of them may end up being people we help find other positions in the organization because we're transitioning, but big lift.
Lisa, I can't say enough about the quality of the people out in the field. We had, in that, what was it, 6 weeks ago, when we had that little reef, cold weather, the little small street or two that Francine and I happened to both live on, was out of power for, I don't know, we thought it was gonna be a couple of days, it ended up only being a few hours, but because the guys were there working all night.
Yeah, we have very dedicated employees.
They did a great job.
It's the beauty of being a homegrown business. Everybody feels commitment to this community. It's where we live and work.
Lisa, under team cultures, you have, working agreement discussions for 3 years, and then they stop. Are those labor union discussions?
They are. We're actively in discussions now, and I'm actually anticipating we may get a 4-year agreement out of the current.
That's why it's only
That would carry us
23.
forward
Got it.
potentially.
Thank you. Yep.
Absolutely. And then, you know, lastly, just the community growth and the partnerships. We, as I mentioned, we got step 2.0 completed. The generation plan input to the trustees was completed. The beginnings of the conversation around what could rate design look like are kicking off in February. The cost of service study that goes along with that was completed late last year, and so that will feed into the information that the rate advisory committee is reviewing to give feedback and input to the board of trustees before we get into a full-blown rate case late this year. That's the trajectory that we are anticipating on those community conversations. So if you want to go to 14, just add that it gives us sort of a projection of where we see the rate cases coming. They've been slotted at roughly 5.5% per increase. That's just it's a placeholder. We're going to do the due diligence this summer and start to really dive into that. But the things that I just talked to you about are really the drivers behind that: the growth, the investment in the technology, the changes that we have to make to be modernized and ready to go for the next several decades. And I will stop there and see if there are any other questions or any other topics you guys want to dive into.
I think it's a fantastic documentation of all the things that the larger CPS has to do. I mean, it's enormous, right? And so kudos.
Thank you.
If I were to take that, though, and ask you, what are the top 3, 4 handful of metrics that if you were to say CPS is rocking the house, or CPS is in trouble, or CPS is okay, what would those 3 or 4 or 5 metrics be? Because each one of those sections has a list of 4 or 5, right? And
Actually, we're
when you
working-
get too many metrics, you kind of
Yeah.
lose your direction. You
So
know?
we're working with the trustees now to boil that down to a subset that they want to see on a regular basis. So we've been showing them roughly 20 metrics a month, and even they're like, oh, too much. So we're trying to help scale it down. I would say the things where we're doing well, reliability has been improved. The delivery business invested a ton of money in tree trimming over the last year. They're doing it again this year. It helps. I think Austin's trouble this last couple of weeks shows how it bites you if you don't. I think that the community conversations that we've gotten engaged in, and to your point, the rebound to some degree on having the right level of communication, those are the things I think we're doing well. Growth, you know, in spite of a hideous number of supply chain challenges, transformers being my current woe, we are still growing massively and delivering service to people. And so I think those are the things where we're delivering. I think digital ERP is going to be a ginormous lift for this organization. It's doing a major transformation at the same time that you're doing your day job, and that's a lot to eat for this organization all at once.
Are your business customers happy?
I think that our business customers are as wounded as our residential customers. I think that we're in the same process of recovering with them as we are with everybody else. I think that we're recovering. I wouldn't say we have recovered, if that makes sense. Our customer satisfaction scores this year we're not back to our pre-pandemic level yet.
Well, Lon, I guess we need to move on, but
I'm sorry.
Lisa, I want to thank you for a great presentation, but also just might take the liberty to say that I've been very impressed with Kevin and Vinny, because we've dealt with them before, equally impressed with yourself.
Thank you, sir.
It's really great to know that we've got this quality of leadership at CPS.
I am proud to be a part of this team. I will say that for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say that it's a great roadmap. I mean, I can't imagine what you're going through. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of influences, internal, external, right? So but it's a good roadmap.
A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, yeah. It's well thought out.
It is a wholesale industry transition, not unlike what the phones went through, not unlike what the airlines went through. I mean, you're seeing it, you're living it today.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you all very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, Chair Kelly, we're ready to transition over to the roundtable. I would say that I would like to be with you between a couple of minutes. I'd like to get the council over.
Yes. Well, why don't we start with that? Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about since back in December, I guess, November, December, was the possibility of having at least some portion of us take pretty much of a day trip up to Austin while the legislature's in session. You know, they always said when I worked at TxDOT, you don't want to watch sausage being made, but I think somehow we need to be aware of what goes on at the legislature. And so if we're able to find some committee hearing or something that we could attend and listen, something that would be pertinent to the electric industry, ERCOT, and PUC and so forth, I think that would be a great opportunity for us to understand better what kind of environment our CPS leadership is having to operate in. So anyway, I'll let whoever needs to take the lead.
Sure. I'll just talk briefly about it. I did speak with our state and Fed team. Carrie Meyer and Marie Stoner are really instrumental in helping guide this conversation. And Carrie's, I believe, is still on in case I misspeak. She can correct me. But so traditionally we've gone in March, and that is because you know, things are going, bills have been filed, the committees start meeting, and then when we get to April, we are running against the possibility of members not being available to come speak to us. So I forget if we mentioned last month, but this really is, it's an all-day commitment. We will provide transportation up to the Capitol in the morning. We typically meet at a hotel. We have our lunch meeting, so this day does take the place of our March CAC meeting. So there will be 2 meetings in the month of March. This is our March meeting, much like we had the November meeting at the power plant.
Right.
this will take place for the March meeting. So we would provide transportation up, we would have lunch at, a nearby hotel, bring somebody in, have some kind of a speech presentation, tied into what's going on with legislative activities. And then we would either, depending on the location of that hotel, walk or be driven over to the Capitol and have meetings with members, if there's, floor activity happening, any discussion, debate, relevant or not. If there's floor activity, we can view that. So what we need to focus on first is securing a date. So being that we know one of our members has already made it clear that Wednesdays are difficult, we have decided to offer up 3 Tuesday dates in March. You will receive a poll. We're going to send out a survey monkey, as we've done in the past for other information needed. We're going to poll March 7th, 14th, and 21st. And again, we understand because it's an all-day commitment, if you can't join, we're going to go with whoever has the most votes, basically.
Right.
So 7th, 14th, or 21st will be our options. In talking with Carrie, we really won't know what activity, what committees, we might know the committee, but we won't know which bills they're talking or what topics they're discussing, probably till like a couple days beforehand. Right. So we just need to get that date secured so we can get our transportation, our hotel, and start planning. And then we'll be able to work on what members come talk to us. If there's floor activity, we'll figure out all those logistics and what's going to be the best suited for this committee as we get closer to that date. So we just have to kind of be flexible. We might have to, pivot day up. That's just the nature of it. We just have to, kind of go with it. So that'll be the first step, is securing the date, and then, following this meeting in the next couple of days, you will get that survey from us to.
Julia, I have a suggestion, if I might.
Okay.
It'd be great to see how that sausage is being made in our capital and bills go through that are relevant. But I think it'd be also a great opportunity to have some sort of forum with ERCOT.
Okay.
To learn more about them and learn more about their perspective.
Okay.
Right? As they look at us versus we look at them, right? I don't still have the clarity about how to look at them, but it'd be interesting to get their view of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understand, have them understand our role and talk to us about their activity with respect to.
Okay.
I might even get a positive impression about it. Yeah, that's right.
But if you can bleed that in there, I think that'd be really.
Certainly take that back. I know with.
It's always good.
Sure, with
I think that's a good idea.
the relationships that we
So
have,
right?
we can see, what possibilities are there. I see, Mayor Dennis, you have your hand up. Was this for this topic? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Julie. I didn't get the dates that you were proposing.
Oh, I'm sorry, March 7th, 14th, or 21st.
Okay, thank you. Because I did want to add that generally Thursdays and Fridays, they are not in their offices. So those are all a Tuesday. So thank you.
Yes, it was, Carrie informed us that if there is no committee meeting on Thursdays, or their particular committee is not meeting on Thursday, then the likelihood of us catching a member is slim. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays work best, and then knowing from our own membership, just people's availability, even for this meeting and other requests we've had to change the date of our own CAC meeting, we thought Tuesdays would be best to get the most participation.
That's good.
I'm curious, so, John and I were talking before the meeting. I know that there's a topic out there about us changing the dates of the meeting, but I know our Wednesdays are based on y'all's availability because y'all plan them.
It's in the bylaws.
And it's in the bylaws. What if this trip to Austin, there is a potential really good topic that we can sit in on here on a Wednesday versus a Tuesday? So.
And honestly, we won't know that until, as Carrie indicated, possibly 2 to 3 days beforehand. The agendas just aren't set in advance time. And so we do know, for example, the Senate Business and Commerce, which governs a lot of what we do here at CPS Energy, meets on Tuesday, and then they break, and then the Senate goes into session, and then there's a chance they could come back for that. So that's one key committee that we follow. And Carrie, I don't know if you have any other input on committees that are of interest, and I don't even know if the calendars have been set for March yet.
Sure. So with the House committees were actually just announced about a couple of hours ago, so we now have House committees. What still needs to happen on both the House and the Senate side is for a set committee schedule to come out. And what that is every committee will meet at each committee will have a set date, time, and location each week, so that there's no overlap or juggling of where we would always know that committee meets on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. in this room. Traditional State Affairs has met Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Or excuse me, Senate Business and Commerce has met Tuesdays at 8 a.m. We expect that to be the case again this year, but of course we're waiting for that to be announced. We should also find out in the coming days what the House schedule is going to be. And so that will mean we have yet to find out when the committees that we follow most closely on the House side will meet. And that includes State Affairs, Environmental Regulation, Energy Resources, Natural Resources, and the Pensions. In terms of timing, like Joe was saying, per the rules and the Constitution, there are certain posting requirements. And so a committee has a 5-day posting rule. So typically we won't know what a committee is going to be debating, what bills they're going to be talking about, until 5 days before their weekly committee hearing. So for example, Senate Business and Commerce, if they meet Tuesday morning, we're going to know until 5 days before that what their agenda is going to be. And then when it comes to floor debates, we won't know what a floor calendar is going to include until 3 days out. There's a 3-day posting rule. So what all that means to say is just appreciate everyone being flexible to the fact that whatever day that we find, there's going to be something interesting and impactful to watch. It may just not be directly connected to CPS Energy's priority. I'll see if was that covered, Julie, or do you have other items?
Yeah, that's perfect, Carrie. Thank you so much for that clarification. I mean, Dan, if you would like us to also poll Wednesdays, we can. We're thinking Tuesdays might.
Well, no, my concern is, I've been on the committee since 2018. This is the first time we've ever come across a dilemma where one person in particular can't meet on our Wednesdays, and we have to change that for one person. Like I said, I've seen people come and go up in this committee. I'm probably now one of the older ones, so to speak. I just don't see this to be a feasible reaction. Yeah,
Period.
Period. I just don't see how we have, one person is going to make us change what's we've had.
We don't have to. In talking to, the team and going back and looking, we haven't always gone up on a Wednesday. We've gone up on Tuesdays, we've gone up on Thursdays. It has varied over the years. So I was keeping that in mind as a proposal, but we're certainly welcome and open to polling the group for more dates if that's what you would prefer.
I'm not concerned.
Tuesday is a good option though, just because of the fact that the early part of the week seems to be when the legislators tend to be there and more available. So Tuesday sounds fine. I mean, if you want to ask about Wednesday, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just think it would be good, because when we went to Austin the last time, it was because they were proposing the lodge to change for people to pull over or slow down when utility workers were on the road, not just police officers and EMS. So it was very interesting. The topic was appropriate for the group that went up there, and we got to see them, vote on it and table whatever. I just think regardless of what day it is, if it's a Tuesday and we can accommodate all our members, fine. But if there's a topic on Wednesday that's more apropos for us, I think we should be able to be open to both on a Wednesday versus a Tuesday. I don't want it to be closed-minded for just one of our members.
No, and that's, and the point of the topic, we really won't know that. We're
Okay,
gonna have
good.
to pick a date early, and we're gonna just have to be flexible,
Right.
as, you know, as we learn closer to the date, what is gonna be discussed and or presented on the
Right.
day that we've chosen. So we can definitely pull Tuesday and
Okay.
Wednesday, and we will go with, you know, the majority of whoever is, you know, the most available on that particular day.
So, Julia, what would the typical day schedule be then? When would you leave here and, you know?
We would leave about 8 a.m., between 8 and
But I
8:30.
used to some of the meeting started.
Right, so there, that is an option. If, as we get closer to the date, I mean, we could also, I know in the past, we have gone up the night before. Some members have gone up the night before if they are interested in catching, you know, that particular committee meeting. So that's an option we can, explore. Again, once we decide on a date, we can start getting into some of those logistics.
That'd take a serious time commitment.
That would be a serious
Yeah,
time.
really.
Yes, yeah.
I don't envy y'all having to plan these things, you know, that's a tough job to do.
Hitting a moving target.
But typically, you would leave here at about 8:30.
Yes.
The bus would park here. And then-
Yes.
And typically, how late do you stay?
We would plan to leave Austin, around, I think in the past it was around 3 o'clock,
Yeah,
to get back here, you know, by
Right.
5.
Okay.
yeah.
Just wanted kind of an idea. Okay.
Yeah, so it truly is an 8 to 5 day, the time away from, you know, your normal commitments for that day, whatever they might be in or out of the office.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, would this take place, would this replace our regular monthly
I believe
meeting?
that's what they said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it would.
Okay, good.
Yes, it would take the place of the regular scheduled,
Right, okay.
March
I think
8th meeting.
when we went in 19, we met at one of the churches off of 35 in
Yeah.
Mayor Dennis's,
Yes.
jurisdiction, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. It was kind of easy to do that.
Yeah.
All right, well, very good. All right.
That won't be a problem. If you want to do that, Julie, just let me know, and, it's no problem to meet here at Living Way Church, if that works out.
Thank you, we appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
Think about it.
We will, so be on the lookout for that survey. We will get those Wednesday dates added, and, we will send that out to the group. And just as an addition to that, the reason we're not choosing the last week of March is because, that is the week for SA to DC, and a lot of CPS Energy, staff and several others within the community are gonna be, in DC,
Yeah.
All right.
legislators too.
Julia, thank you. We have about 5 minutes or so. So, this is kind of our general discussion time period, and, I guess, Alondra, do we have anything else in particular to talk about, or we just open up now?
Just open up.
Did I miss something, or
Yeah.
do we not approve the minutes?
Yeah, can I propose,
Sorry.
can I move approval of the meeting minutes from January?
Me too.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thanks for catching that.
Way to go, Richard.
I was thinking that
You were
the whole
thinking the
time
same
too. I
thing.
said, you gotta get that out of the
It's
way.
minor in a way, but it's important.
Yeah, thank you for keeping me on track, Richard, I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that everybody has an opportunity to give topic input as to suggestions about what you'd like to hear discussed or presentations from staff. One thing I'll start with is, we've talked a little bit in the past, I believe one of the sessions last year, we talked a little bit about security issues. I guess Steve was the one that brought it up with me. You know, I think there was just recently an incident, was it in California, Steve, where a couple of, somewhere.
Carolina, yeah.
Some people shot up some substations and so forth, and, we're looking at doing others, and anyway, it looked like a possible group, some kind of extremist group that was trying to take out electric, substations. I think we've talked a little bit about security issues for CPS, and I know there's some limits on how much we can be told, because obviously they want to keep some of the information private. that's understandable. But one topic we might want to think about, Yvonne, would be maybe, security, safety planning.
Substation security.
Well, and really just security for the whole operation, you know. Of course, there's always the cyber hacking problem,
And Chinese balloons.
Who's watching the balloons?
Chinese balloons, right.
Aerial attack.
Yeah. So that's maybe a topic, just some sort of security-related topic, physical structures, and then maybe the operational, activities as well.
Operational, physical, and cyber.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just not it, but I want to encourage the rest of the committee to come up with ideas. I'm not trying to monopolize the suggestions, so feel free if anybody else has topic suggestions.
Yeah, I didn't know if this committee had talked about the cyber issues and the hardening of systems, but I was curious in that. I wrote that down as well.
Yeah, okay, good.
So I would certainly be interested, because that's one of my backgrounds as well, is we had to harden our own refineries and plants, so I was just curious.
It's been a while.
It's different.
Yeah.
SCADA systems versus automation, other systems, so that's, I know it's kind of an in-depth topic, but maybe just a high-level overview and what model's being followed.
Or as much as they can tell.
Yeah, because there's a NIST model, there's an executive order model for the CRC and such. Anyway, that's a little bit of my topics.
Happy to.
I don't know if Dr. Cantu joined us, didn't hear that she did, but, she had mentioned a topic, I think, at our pre-meeting.
An update on CAP?
I'm sorry?
An update on CAP?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's something we could add to our list, or she may want to elaborate on that. But anyway, that's
So,
some
John,
suggestions.
before the meeting
Tom,
started.
you're always so reluctant to talk.
Don't hold back.
Steve and I were chatting, and he asked me what district I'm in, and I'm serving on District 9, but I actually now, because of the redistricting, live in District 1.
Oh, really?
So, you know.
I served on that committee, so you can blame me.
There you go. So I guess we have a situation we've got to figure out, right? And Julie was kind enough to kind of chime in and say that we've probably got to update our bylaws to accommodate this kind of scenario. But, you know, it probably won't be the last time they'll do this with the growth of San Antonio the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, and figure out tactically what to do with this situation, right? Because John Courage, who I serve for at District 9, is fine with me staying, but I don't know if the CAC, from a bylaws perspective, is comfortable with that. So we've got to figure that out. So I just throw that out there, that we've got to roll around in that a little bit.
Seems like we would be, if it happened in the middle of his term like that, he would be grandfathered to serve out the remainder of his term before we'd have to address that.
That's where I was mentioning that,
I think it's a good idea that you bring it up now.
Yeah, the bylaws are silent on that. So I wasn't necessarily suggesting that they need to be redrawn or rewritten, but we do need to address the bylaws and clean up some of the ambiguity that's there, one of which is this item. So there's a lot that is left unsaid in the bylaws.
Okay.
So
I guess I want to be kind of transparent about that and make sure we deal with it in the right way.
Absolutely.
So when is the end of your term?
Geez, I don't know. I started in, I think, the end of
2021.
2021. Yeah, end of 2021.
September 2021.
Right.
So your
So
first.
you're good through 20.
That was a memorable day, huh?
This role.
It was, Tom, it was. I remember it.
One of the first activities.
I see. Okay.
Congratulations.
And I brought this up, with Bill last year, and I just talked about it with John and Deanna right before this meeting, because I moved out of District 1. I'm temporarily living somewhere else, but buying a home soon, and I don't know where that's gonna be.
Yeah.
So I haven't, so now
You'll be in a similar.
there might be a District 1 vacancy.
Or we could just swap.
But or something. Well, we'll have to,
Not houses.
Yeah. It's come up with in other ways too, but I didn't even think about the redistricting, so that's a good question. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have a consultation with our legal team relative to the bylaws.
That'd be great.
We'll have to
That'd be great.
pass forward there.
Yvonne, would it be appropriate to have maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 members out there. If that's not appropriate, that's okay, but I just thought it'd be nice to maybe get some CAC member input into the bylaws. Steve, you had some?
There was one other topic I think I talked to you about, and I know there's not a lot we can say because there's legal issues involved and confidentiality and everything, but curious about our ongoing lawsuit, with
ERCOT?
With ERCOT, yeah. Oh, I lost my mind again.
At least you lost it, I never have.
What are the topics, what are we trying to gain, if we could say that? What's the timeline? What's the downside, the upside, that sort of thing.
Litigation briefing?
Without getting into the,
Maybe we could,
Jeopardizing
the
it.
things that you can't say.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Could even those conversations be in, executive session, so we're not recording and it's more a confidential or privileged
That's-
conversation
that's
with
an excellent-
GAC members?
Yeah.
that's an excellent point.
That's a good point.
All right, well, I think my watch about 5 minutes over, so I'm happy to stay longer myself, but others may have other things to do, and I know our staff folks probably have lots of stuff on their plate, so.
Yep.
I move to adjourn?
I guess that,
Second.
okay, very good. We're all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you, John.
Tom, I'm just teasing you, we're always happy to have you.